This is Voice Upon a Time with Lord Tracy.
Most of you have watched the 1993 movie Tombstone, where Doc Holliday's portrayed by actor Val Kilmer. In this movie, Doc was depicted as a good guy at heart by helping Wyatt Earp to keep law and order in the dangerous little town of Tombstone, Arizona. Well, I'm here today to tell you that the real Doc Holliday wasn't nearly so squeaky clean. I'm fixing to tell you the truth behind the legend of the slickest gunslinger in the West, Doc Holliday. He was born John Henry Holliday on August 4th, 1851 in Griffin, Georgia. Doc was the second child born to his parents, Major Henry and Alice Jane Holliday, but his older sister passed away during childbirth. He would remain an only child. His father was a veteran of several wars, including the Cherokee Indian War and the Mexican-American War. When he returned in 1848 from the Mexican-American War, he brought with him an orphaned Mexican boy named Francisco Hidalgo. It's said that when John Henry was a young child, Francisco taught him how to become the quickest draw in the West. Growing up on a southern frontier farm was tough living, with humid air and weather that you just couldn't count on. John's family was Scotch-Irish like many in the region and was raised Protestant. His mother taught him manners and etiquette, and his father filled him with war stories and survival skills. John was about 9 years old when the Civil War broke out, and his father once again left for war. But not before moving his family even further south, down to the Georgia-Florida border. John attended school and was a good student, though he was noted as being somewhat rebellious. Quickly after his mother's death in May of 1866 from consumption, that's what tuberculosis was called back then, Major remarried to a neighbor's daughter who was 23, that was 8 years older than John. John's relationship with his father became strained, and he left home to attend Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery in 1869, one of the best dental schools in the country. Seemingly, he did quite well at school and graduated with a license in 1872. He moved back to St. Louis for a little while to join a friend's dental practice before he moved back to Georgia. Now, here's where the more interesting part of Holliday's life comes in. In 1872, in a story recounted in Doc Holliday's biography written by Gary Roberts, Holliday first killed a man in Georgia during a racial dispute. Holliday and a few of his friends were at a watering hole when a group of colored men joined them. Holliday didn't approve and he told them to leave. They didn't. He produced a gun and shot 1 to 3 of the men to death. Now, a few historians think this story might not be entirely accurate due to the discrepancies in the 1907 version, but it wouldn't have been too out of character for Holliday, given his preponderance towards violence. Also, around this time, he was diagnosed with tuberculosis, just like his mother, who he watched die from that disease. With no effective cure, it was thought that a dry climate at least could alleviate some of the symptoms, either because he was run out of town or due to his sickness, or maybe both. He moved to the dry air of Dallas shortly thereafter in 1872. He opened up a dental practice in Dallas, but it wasn't for long. According to the True Western magazine, Doc's constant coughing and illness kept patients away. So he had to learn to make money another way, cards and gambling. Refined, intelligent, and good at keeping a poker face, Doc excelled at faro when he became a dealer at several saloons across Dallas. Faro was a game which pitted the banker against other players. It was also a game that could be easily rigged. Doc was extremely good at faro, or at least extremely good at cheating, earning himself a lot of money and a lot of enemies too. Throughout the next few years, Doc was put in jail quite a few times for gambling in Dallas. To avoid the charges, he went on the run in the Southwest, dealing faro at saloons all across the way. He got into more than one disagreement that required the use, or at least the threatening of, the skills that he had learned from Francisco years back. He seems to have gotten into gunfights throughout Texas, Kansas, Wyoming, and New Mexico. He's also known to have sliced a man's stomach open when the man refused to follow the faro rules that Doc had implemented. At one point, it's thought that U.S. Marshals and Texas Rangers were even after him. In 1879, he had made enough money to open his own saloon in New Mexico. He spent his time dealing faro and drinking just as hard as he could drink, until one night a former Army scout put up a fuss when one of Holliday's saloon girls, she was probably a prostitute, told him that she wasn't in love with him. The Army scout went outside and began to fire shots into Holliday's establishment. So Doc went outside and killed the man. The following year, he found himself in Tombstone, Arizona, where history was waiting for him. Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday first became familiar where else but at a faro gaming table. As the deputy of Dodge City, Earp was on the trail of a well-known train robber, Dave Rodabaugh, and was venturing way out of his jurisdiction in pursuit, nearly 400 miles into Fort Griffin, Texas. Now, historians believe that Earp wasn't doing this out of any kind of sense of justice, but rather the considerable reward money. Either way, he was directed to the faro table of Doc Holliday, who's dealt with Rodabaugh. Normally, Holliday would never talk to a lawman, but upon hearing about the reward over a game of faro, he spilled the beans that he had heard Rodabaugh was hightailing it back to Kansas. Earp wired the information to a friend there, and Rodabaugh was soon captured. Now, it's not known if Earp shared the reward money with Holliday or not, nor who won that game of faro. Also, according to a story supposedly told by Earp, possibly this is just a legend, I don't know, Holliday once saved Earp's life. In 1879, when Holliday was paying a visit to Dodge City with his girlfriend Big Nose Kate, the noted cowboy Tabor Driscoll pulled a gun on Earp and was about to shoot him when Holliday came up behind him and placed a gun at his temple. Driscoll dropped his gun, and from then on, Earp credited Holliday with saving his life. Whether it's true or not, in 1881, Earp wrote a letter to Holliday asking him to join him in Tombstone, saying that he could use a dentist in those parts. More likely, Earp probably just wanted his favorite faro dealer by his side to help fleece the denizens of the then prosperous silver mining town. So Holliday moved to Tombstone, and that was where his legend was made, and why anybody still remembers who he was. It seems Holliday's participation in the showdown at the OK Corral against Ike Clanton and his men had more to do with his loyalty to Earp and the fact that he rarely said no to a gunfight than upholding the law. There's also some evidence that Clanton may have been spreading rumors about Holliday robbing a stagecoach, and that his girlfriend, Big Nose Kate, was a prostitute. There's also a story that Clanton called Holliday and the Earps out for a fight over having cheated Clanton in a faro game. On the other hand, this all may have been said after the fact to give Holliday reason to be in that gunfight. The violence only took about 30 seconds, left 3 men dead and several men injured. While no one knows for sure who fired the first shot, it was Doc's bullet that first rendered a fatal shot. It's even written in some accounts that Clanton wasn't even armed. But finding the truth about what happened in that gunfight is about as difficult as finding Bigfoot. In the end, Holliday, along with Earp, was put on trial for murder. He was exonerated, but several attempts were made on his life over the next few years. He eventually made his way to Colorado, where he increasingly became dependent on alcohol and opium as his health deteriorated. He died in 1887 at the young age of 37 in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, from the same illness that claimed his mother, tuberculosis. It's said that Wyatt Earp cried.
You've been listening to Lord Tracy Turner and his classic tales at voiceuponatime.com.